Welcome to the Geek podcast, where we're back. Welcome back.
I'm back.
You're back. I'm back. We're all back.
I'm back.
It's been a couple weeks for us. It hasn't been any weeks for you guys. Well, it's been 1 week, I suppose.
It's
but
been
that's
1
normal.
week. That's true.
Yeah. So we have been playing games, and mostly we wanted to talk about that. So we're going to talk a little bit about Assassin's Creed, and that's mostly me. And we're going to talk about Mario Odyssey tonight because they're both out, and I've been playing them a lot the last couple weeks. And you just got Mario Odyssey today, which I'm super excited about.
Today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I slept for like 6 hours yesterday, being like super sick, and like I'd been very like out of it over the weekend. I don't know if it's allergies, just sugar crashing after Halloween, which could potentially be it as well. Like I don't know what it is, but I've just been feeling bad lately. And when my wife came home for lunch, she saw that I was lying around on the couch and just not feeling well at all, which is unlike me. And so she went and bought my Christmas present early, got a Switch, took extra on her lunch break, went and bought the Switch. And when she came home and I was still asleep, she woke me up by putting a Switch on my lap. So I was like, Aww.
That's sweet. Okay, so we'll talk about Mario here in a minute, but I have to get some Assassin's Creed stuff off my chest.
Right.
And
yes.
Remind me again, you've played a little bit of one of the Assassin's Creed games?
Yes, I've played a little bit of Assassin's Creed 2.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I really like it, and it makes me want to play the rest of the games. And I've got a Steam link that should be coming in soon where I'm going to hook it up and play it on the TV. So, I mean, I'm going to play through it soonish. Okay. But I just haven't done it yet.
So I've played every mainline Assassin's Creed game, and it's a series that like I just pick up now. I don't even really look at the pre-release coverage. I just know that I'm going to like it and get it.
Yeah, you're going to get it.
And this is the first one that's like really fallen flat for me, which is disappointing. It's not what I was after. I mean, I guess I should talk through like impressions of it. So my first impressions of even like the menu were a little bad. Like they used the Destiny menu of like having a virtual cursor, which I never understood on a console, instead of just like hitting a button to jump between buttons in a menu. And I mean, but that's like a nitpicky thing. Another thing I noticed right away was that like my PS4 was actually kind of chugging on this game, especially in one of the first areas. And I don't know if I got used to it or if it just got better over time, or maybe it really is just the intro area where it was kind of like chugging along. And I didn't see anything about this in any of the coverage when I went back and looked, but most of those were also played on like either, PS4 Pros or like PC or other systems. So I don't know if other people on like the normal PS4 have been experiencing it like I have. But this is the first one that I feel like my system is chugging, and probably one of the first PlayStation 4 games where I've felt like that at all.
And that makes me really sad to hear, because I bought the original PlayStation 4 instead of the Pro when I grabbed one, specifically because the way that the specs looked, that there wouldn't really be any reason to get a Pro over a 4 without running in 4K. That even the stuff that I was seeing side-by-side comparisons were either the original did slightly better or there was no real difference in terms of anything other than Super HD.
Yeah, and, this is honestly the first time like I've felt like this at all. So there's something to be said for like most games are optimized to the original hardware spec. I don't think it's a big issue. It's just, I don't know. I noticed it in this game, and maybe it was because I was paying a lot of attention because I normally really like Assassin's Creed. I don't know why it stuck out to me, but it did. So after like a little bit of that, the main first impression I got from the first hour or two is that the intro is just bad. Like, this is the worst intro to any Assassin's Creed game ever.
Okay, so you told me that, and I saw you tweet about it. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, I'm really curious on how the intro is bad, because in 2, I didn't like the intro to it either. That once I got in with Ezio, everything was fine, but I didn't like the real life one, the modern take on it. I didn't like that area nearly as much as I did the assassin part. So how is this one bad? Because I already already didn't enjoy what might be the best one?
So some of the other ones, like you start in the real world, like you said, and then or the modern day world, and then you like jump into the character, and then it gets better. Other ones are just they're paced a bunch of different ways. Assassin's Creed 3 actually has a very interesting intro, which if you've never played it, I don't want to spoil it for you because there's kind of a twist.
I actually have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a twist at the end of that intro before you hit the real game that's like, oh, that's actually fairly clever.
Okay.
That actually might be the best intro to any of the games is Assassin's Creed 3 and what they do with the whole thing.
I may do that. I may just install it just to play that and not go through the actual game just to see that then, because it was part of the Steam bundle or the Humble bundle I picked up.
Yeah, this one doesn't tell you the premise of the game or any of like the grounding principles of what's even going on in the world. Like it just does not introduce you to the world. It drops you into this character who's already had, well, eventually I figured this out because I played a ton of the game, who's already had like the worst thing happen in his life that's going to happen. And
yeah,
but you don't know that. You're just dropped into this character who's like about to go in some ruins and try to kill a guy. And nothing is explained about it. And I felt like, okay, maybe they're going to give me a couple minutes of this, and then they would like jump back and explain some stuff.
Right.
And I felt like that for the first 3 hours of the game. Like that they were just missing the basic premise of who am I? What am I doing? What's my background? Why do I care about Egypt and the current historical issues at all? Like in the least. They just don't touch on that. You slowly figure it out. But like I said, I spent about 2 or 3 hours of this game right at the beginning just being like, why should I care? Which is a bad feeling to go into a game with.
And I don't know, for me not being an Assassin's Creed person, that doesn't sound that bad because I haven't been invested in any of them at this point at all. So as a newbie, that might not bother me as much.
Well, it's even like the main character's premise is introduced, like who he is or what his deal is or where he fits in the world. You're just kind of thrown into it. And again, like you can go figure it out, and you do figure it out eventually. But it's just a really bad introduction to an open world game where it should be setting you up with like, here's the world, here's where you fit in it, here's why it's interesting. Okay, go. You know, it skips that. And I think it's trying to skip it on purpose. So it's just like, hey, you're just in the world, just go for it. And I really think it does a bad job.
Yeah, I could totally see how that would, where they're trying to push the world more than the character. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. The intro is bad, and then after I got out of the intro, like I just didn't even want to with the next part of the story because I wasn't invested. So the world opened up to me, and then I immediately went and I did my normal Assassin's Creed thing of trying to get every single sync point that I could get to unveil the map. Like every high point that you climb to, and you sync, if you've never played the game, you climb up to a high point. And once you reach a perch that it's pretty obvious where it is on the minimap, you know, but the challenge is supposed to be getting to the top of it. And then you sink, and then you get a huge area of the map revealed to you. And that's honestly one of my favorite parts of Assassin's Creed, especially because they usually make the climbing in these games into challenges that you have to overcome. Like the climbing is almost a puzzle. And you played enough to experience this, right?
Yes, I have. And that was the part that I see. And I didn't like this part as much as you do. I like the climbing and running and kind of Prince of Persia aspect of it. But for some reason, I never got into the actually unlocking pieces of the map. Like that part felt kind of tedious to me. And it also did in Zelda as well. When Breath of the Wild was doing the same thing with the towers, it felt kind of tedious having to make sure that I climbed up and did that first rather than just being able to scout it as I went.
And I enjoy it just because it like gives you something to aim for that makes you end up in a climbing challenge. So did you like the fact that climbing in the games that you've played for Assassin's Creed is like a little bit challenging and you have to think about it and like your approach up a building?
Oh, yeah, I did. And that was one of the things that I really liked about it because none of the stuff that I was climbing on was just really ever a straight shot up. There were things that I saw that I wanted to be able to do, that I wanted to get up to and never was able to because I wasn't good enough yet. But I had no clue how to do that yet.
So I love that feeling too, and I really like that puzzly challenge aspect of climbing in Assassin's Creed games. That is entirely gone in this game. It's not there, and I've always seen that as a core part of the series. In this game, it's always either just a straight shot up or such an obvious path up that it might as well not exist. Like, I mean, part of it is the setting. I think that they just picked a really bad setting to do an Assassin's Creed game. Like, there's not a lot of verticality in the ancient world of Egypt. You know?
Yeah, I mean there is other in the ancient world, but that was what I was thinking about with Egypt. I mean, just with depending on how they design the levels, there are places that could be, but in general, Egyptian architecture wasn't necessarily sprawling vertically. It was way more horizontal because of the climate.
Yeah, and it is. And it's to the detriment of the game and the gameplay systems of climbing in general. Like, I normally have tons and tons of fun climbing in Assassin's Creed games, which is one of the reasons I love Breath of the Wild climbing too. I know you and I have talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't have fun climbing in this game. So it's like a whole core gameplay part that I love that's just absent, which really, really hurts my enjoyment of the game. And
that's actually what I was about to say. That's kind of like one of the things. It's like if you take smashing Goombas away from Mario, it's like, well, it's a good game, but I really do kind of want to jump on things.
Yeah, I was just missing it. And I mean, there's a couple other things with this game if I want to get nitpicky, but like, I mean, it's buggy in some ways, but every Assassin's Creed game is a little bit buggy. It's a little bit janky, like whatever. You know, I still did go to every like sync point and get everyone because I enjoy that. And I was like, okay, that, you know, by the end of it, I was in a better mood from the intro to go back and try the story again. So once I got into the story, I realized that like, normally I get really invested in the character story, especially like Ezio, right? Like Ezio has a trilogy of games, and I cared about him by pretty early into the Assassin's Creed 2, and then I cared about him all through the rest of his games. And I have not cared about the main character in this game at all, and I'm probably 75% of the way through. I looked up a guide to see kind of like what I had left of the main story.
Right.
Yeah. I just don't care. Like, his story is not interesting in this world. The main thing in his life that was going to happen that affected him the most happened before you got there as a player. And this is kind of the fallout, but not in a very interesting way. It's in an extremely obvious way that I don't know. I just don't feel inspired to like keep going with his story. That being said, that's kind of like the personal and character story. The other side of it is that there's a historical narrative going on here that's like Cleopatra and Ptolemy, and you know, I'm sure Caesar is going to show up because they've talked about a couple things around it. I didn't get far enough to see him yet, but I don't see how he couldn't. And that's interesting.
Yes. And that's actually the reason I wanted to play the game more than anything else, is because I love the setting and I also love the history around it. So if they were able to tie it in and do cool things, kind of like they did with the American the American Revolution, like they did with the American Revolution, then that would be interesting to me to be able to see what they're playing with. But it depended on how they did it, whether or not it would be worth the money for me.
Yeah, and you know, it's happened before in Assassin's Creed games where the historical story is more interesting than the personal. I would say that what you were just talking about, Assassin's Creed 3, is probably a really good example of that, where the main character ends up being fine, but not all that interesting. It's really the story of the revolution that's good there. And the thing is, it's just in Assassin's Creed Origins, it's few and far between. Whereas when it's gone this balance, you know, in past games where the history is more interesting than the personal, you can mainline that historical setting and get really invested in that, even though you're not that invested in the main characters. In this, they've added levels and they've added gear and they've added like procedurally generated RPG gear with different color codings to it, and basically every RPG system that exists out there right now that's super generic, they tacked all that onto this game, and they made levels a thing. And levels were kind of a thing before, but it was almost like unlocking bonus abilities that added to your arsenal, right? Like in past Assassin's Creed games, if you'd never upgraded your gear and you didn't really spend those points for levels to get extra abilities, if you were skilled at the game, you could defeat endgame like characters and bosses, and you could beat the whole game with like, you know, a low ability run or like a low health run or like stuff like that, right? There was skill to the game, and you know, the combat was kind of along the lines of, you know, that Batman-ish kind of, you know, Shadow of War type combat where you have to watch what's going on, you have to parry, you have to counterattack, stuff like that. Yes. But if you were good at it, again, and especially if you were good at the stealth and using like the assassinations and stuff, like your skill would shine through beyond any gear that you had or equipment you had or level ups that you had done.
Right.
That has been thrown out the window. This game has levels that severely impact how you play the game. Like, if there are enemies more than, I think it's like 4 levels above you, so anything like 5 levels or higher above you,
Right.
instead of having a level above that enemy's name, which is another thing that never happened before, but, you know, as they turned it more into an RPG, it's just a skull above that character's name. And you do so much less damage to them that there's no point in even trying. And some of them will just instant kill you. So it's not about your skill, and it's not about understanding the combat system. It's about, did you do enough grinding so that you can do the next mission?
And that's not the kind of thing I want in
I don't want it either.
In an action game.
No.
And I get irritated in action games. One of the reasons I don't play a lot of them is because I don't want the RPG elements to actually be full-on RPG elements, and a lot of them are going that route like this, where when I'm playing an action game, I don't want to have to grind for levels, that I don't want to have to upgrade my armor, because I don't even enjoy that in most RPGs. I do it because I have to, and I've actually been put off of some RPGs because of it. And I don't want to do that in a game like this, where I just want to go around and stealth kill people, get through the story, and actually play the action adventure that I'm playing. It seems like that's a modern gaming sensibility that is shoehorned in.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a good fit, which is interesting because I know my reaction is different than like all of the critical reception that I've seen. And maybe it's because I just really liked this game series before, and they're taking it in a new direction, and I like it less now. Maybe other people didn't like where it was before, and they're happy to see it move this way. In taking a system where I used to be able to take on endgame enemies with like almost starter gear with no upgrades, and it felt elegant to do it that way. And now I can't. And then on top of that, like, assassinations are always instant kill. Like, it's a core tenet of the game, right? If you sneak up on someone and you hit them in the neck with your hidden blade knife, like, they will die. This is how this series works. That doesn't exist anymore. If they are higher level than you and you like assassinate them, half the time they'll just get up and they'll be like, no, I'm fine. Like, it's just taking away so many of the core tenets of the game that I don't know. I think that the interplay of the leveling system, the gear system, and the combat, which just kind of feels like the most generic brawlers out there, it ruined this game for me. And
I hate that for you.
I hate that for me too. Thank you. But the problem is probably I came into this wanting an Assassin's Creed game, and other people may have been coming into this wanting an open world Egypt game. So with everything I've said in mind, if you haven't ever played Assassin's Creed before and you like open world games in general, and you're very interested in Egypt and you just want an open world Egypt game, you could probably really love this game. If you have no like preconceptions of what an Assassin's Creed game should be, you could easily jump into this and love it. It's just me with my baggage from the series, because I loved the other games in the series so much, that what they did to Assassin's Creed their origins, like, it makes it feel like a generic Ubisoft open world game for me. And so I stopped playing it. I mean, that's kind of my conclusion here. Like, I'm done. I stepped away. I'm probably going to uninstall it tonight now that we're done talking about it. Like, I just don't want to touch this game again.
And you're not going to finish it. You're not even going to get through the mainline story rather than going through the extra stuff and exploring. You're actually going to be done and finish this. This is going to be the first Assassin's Creed game that you don't completely finish.
It will. It will be the first mainline Assassin's Creed game that I don't finish. And I even looked for... This is how much I like the series, right? I wanted to go back to, like, the feeling of, okay, like, instant kill for assassinations, and like, just let me mainline the historical story, because there's something there, right, that like scratches a little bit of the itch. And if I could just finish it without worrying about grinding out levels, I was going to. So I went into their cash shop ready to spend money to level myself up to max level. Like, if they had something in there for $5, or maybe even, honestly, because I love the series, $15, that would have been like, max out all your power, max out all your level, I would have dropped money right then, just so I could go through and like play through the game, because I'm invested in the series. But it wasn't there. You know, they have other stuff. They have other things that are time savers, but like, I couldn't skip the leveling, which was really the rub with this one.
Okay, I didn't know there was a cash shop on this. So going back, referencing what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago with the Shadow of War loot boxes, Battlefront, all of this stuff with the microtransactions, what are they selling on here? Because I was 100% unaware of a cash shop in Assassin's Creed Origins.
Not a lot that's interesting. I mean, they're selling some of like the DLC in there is the main thing, but also like if you want to buy crafting materials so that you don't have to go hunt them in the open world, stuff like that. You can buy some gear, but it's not. I mean, they've had cash shops in Assassin's Creed with their like Ubisoft credits for the last like 4 or 5 games. It's just something in the background that you can ignore. And if you don't specifically go looking for the menu, you would never run into it, Whereas like Shadow of War, no matter what, you're going to see that menu and they're going to shove it in your face. They're going to give you free stuff to try to get you hooked. And like, it's part of the game that they designed it around to try to get players to go there.
Okay.
This one doesn't feel like that. But I went there ready to spend money, and the thing I wanted wasn't there. So I stepped away from this one. All this being said, I still love the series. So if you've never played an Assassin's Creed game, and what I mentioned about like open world Egypt doesn't appeal to you, I would still recommend Assassin's Creed 2 or Assassin's Creed Syndicate as the best places to start. Assassin's Creed 2, if you want like Italy in Renaissance, it's Renaissance Italy, with Ezio, and it's a self-contained story that's great in Assassin's Creed 2, but then also if you really like it, Ezio's story continues over 2 more games over the course of his life, so you can get into a bigger sprawling epic that all ties together, and I really like that trilogy of games. So Assassin's Creed 2 is a great place to start, or if you want something a little more modern or a different setting, Assassin's Creed Syndicate is really good, and not a lot of people bought it when it came out 2 years ago. I know I'm in a minority here, but it's fun. It's Industrial Revolution England, and it has a ton of like modern gameplay conveniences that the other Assassin's Creed games don't have. Like they're still fine without it, but it's the most streamlined one that's come out in a long time. And I really, really like Syndicate. I'm actually thinking that when I delete Origins, I might re-download Syndicate and play it again.
Wow. Just to be able to scratch that itch of, I want to play an Assassin's Creed game, dadgummit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So those are my recommendations. Thanks for letting me get that off my chest. I feel better.
I think I might still like this. This does not sound like a $60 game to me. This may be a spring or summer Steam sale when it's $30. I can totally see myself playing this. And
if you set your expectations, like if you go into this expecting an open world Ubisoft Egypt game and you have those expectations going in, I think you could really like it because I know you like Egypt a lot.
Yeah, I do. And that's one thing that I think I might even like this one better than the Ezio games because I don't like the setting on those. That's one of the things that's actually pushing me away from it is that Ezio and everything is really cool and the story is interesting, but the Renaissance Italy stuff is completely uninteresting to me. I've never been interested in that period in time. So whenever I don't have this feeling of, oh, I need to go see what's going on and experience this, it's like, all right, it's there. I just don't like that setting as much. So that's one of the things on this one and Assassin's Creed 3 that makes me think I might like it better. Or not necessarily better, but be more of a fit for me.
Yeah, totally. No, you'll have to let me know if you pick it up on the cheap later, because like I said,
it'll be on the cheap.
If you have the right expectations going into this game, or if you've never played an Assassin's Creed game before, listeners, like you might really like it. It might be a good fit. But I wanted to start with Assassin's Creed because I knew I was less happy with it, so that we could get to Mario because Mario Odyssey is like pure joy. Like that is what I feel every time I boot up this game. And I loved this game. I actually we're getting towards the end of the year here, and my first year at this job has been so busy that I just realized how much PTO I have to use before the end of the year, and I don't know where to spend it. I haven't taken days off, really. So
no, you haven't.
No, so I made a long weekend with Mario in it, and I basically took that Friday that it came out, and I played Mario literally the entire day. Like, I got my kids out the door to school, my wife went to work, and I had the house to myself, and I played Mario until the kids walked in the door, and they're like, what have you been doing? And I was like, I literally played Mario from the time you walked out the door until just now. And then I got them dinner, and then I played it again until I went to bed. Like, I played probably 12 hours in one day of Mario Odyssey.
Cow.
And I mean,
Like
I beat it, like beat with air quotes around it, because when you see the credits roll of this game, like you've barely scratched the surface of it. You know, I
Right.
wasn't trying to mainline it. Like every world you end up in, you have, well, you know, because you started to play today, you have those little like
Right.
empty circles of how many moons you need.
yes.
Yeah. So
And
that's
okay,
like
so with those,
that's like the required amount to get to the next level. I would always just explore the
Oh.
world for fun. So every single world, I had about twice as many as I actually needed before I moved on to the next level. And I still beat
Okay,
it in
see-
like 10 hours.
I didn't know that. I thought that the circles were all of the ones in the level, and then there were specific moons that you had to get to move forward.
Oh, no,
So
not
I
even
hadn't-
close.
And I haven't done that. Like I haven't even gotten past I'm in the first world technically after you get everything. It's technically the third world, but it's the sandy world, the first real one.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I haven't even gotten through all of it yet to see that. So I mean, I've just had it today, this morning, and I've been working all day too. So I didn't realize that was how the moons like that worked. Okay.
Yeah, so I think to beat the game and see the credits roll, you need somewhere in the realm of like 100 to like 120 moons. And
Okay.
when I finished the game and I saw the credits roll at the end of that first day, that marathon session of play, I had about 240. So I'm guessing I had like double the amount that you actually need to get to the credits. And even then, I feel like I barely scratched the surface. So I looked into it, and there's over 800 moons in this game. Like,
Okay.
there are moons everywhere. It's not like stars used to be in Mario 64.
Yes.
Like, they put some moons are super obvious. Like if you just look around the landscape, there's just some sitting around places.
Yeah, there
you
are
know?
some, like, actually, I walked over a hill and there was a moon between two cacti.
Yeah, and
Like,
for
that was it.
everyone like that, there are some that are like super hidden and buried, and like you really have to explore to find it, or you have to go into a different like self-contained smaller world and do like a platforming challenge or something. But there's moons everywhere, and like you can actually go, if you pause and look at the map, you can go into the list and see the list of moons that are in there.
Oh, I
And-
hadn't even gone into the map yet.
Yeah, and the other thing with the moons is that don't feel like you need to be a completionist on your first time through the game,
Right.
because after you see the credits roll, you literally unlock half the moons or more. There's something that happens so that you want to go back to every one of the worlds.
Okay.
And when you go back to each world for the first time, you can trigger a thing that literally just like unleashes all the other moons in that level.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm still playing. Like my daughter and I are still playing. I mean, I've been watching her do her first playthrough of it, which she's working on it every day, which is fun to see. And I keep going back to my game and just adding moons. I think I'm somewhere in the 400s now, because after that marathon day, I moved over to like casual mode,
Yeah, I think you should have. I think that was a good choice.
Yeah, but I mean, it's really fun. Like I keep going back to it. I'm probably going to be playing this game for the next month or two very casually, and I don't see myself taking it off the Switch ever, because why would I?
Yeah. Actually, I ended up buying it on the Switch. I told you about this morning, that we ended up buying, there's an app called Ibotta, and one of the things that they did was it's a cash back app that if you you go in, and if you buy anything through that app, like it'll take you to Amazon or Walmart or GameStop, that there's always a percentage that you get in cash back. And it's super useful, and they had a 20% cash back on a lot of stuff. So we ended up actually ordering Mario Kart 8 and Mario Odyssey before a Switch to get the 20% off on them, because they capped at $20. And so we got the physical copies of it, but I wanted to play it today when Jennifer brought me the Switch last night. So we're just going to return that. We're just going to eat that like $11 discount. But because I realized that because of how good you said this was and how good Austin said this was, that I would probably never delete this off of my Switch, and it would just let me keep another game in the system to swap between. That because I do still do physical games, but it will absolutely stay on there from what I can tell. That I really have no doubt in my mind that is exactly the reason that I bought it digitally too.
I really like that it's like this Mario is the first adventure game Mario in a while, too.
Yes.
Because there's almost like there's platforming Mario and there's adventure game like exploration Mario. And
Right.
I like them for different reasons. I think that if I had to rank Mario games overall, I probably like the platforming ones a little bit better. But this would be my top one from like the adventure side, from like Mario 64, Sunshine, all of those.
And Sunshine was never one of my favorite games. Like, I was actually kind of disappointed in Sunshine and Galaxy because I wanted a Mario 64 sequel, that I wanted that gameplay again on a better system. And booting this up, I feel immediately that's what this is. Mario Odyssey feels like a direct successor to Mario 64, unlike any other Mario game that I've played yet.
Oh, it is. It is. And there are some glorious Mario 64 throwbacks after the credits roll that I'm not going to spoil for you, but they are there.
Great.
And if it wasn't already apparent by the time you get there, then it's very apparent that, like, yes, this is a successor to 64 in a way that none of the other games have ever been.
And it's awesome that I absolutely love playing this. It took me a little bit to get used to the controls, though. It was strange. This is the first Mario game that I've ever played, and it might just be the controllers, something. It feels just a little loose on the controls, where I'm so used to Mario being so precise. I don't feel as though I have that precision on this game. Did you have that feeling or issue when you first started out with it?
Only when I tried all of the different control schemes, and like I tried to do the way they suggested with like a controller in each hand, and that was what made it feel bad for me. As soon as I moved to the pro controller or handheld mode, it felt great.
Okay, see, for me, it's even just running around with it that does it. And I was curious about the Pro Controller, because I don't have one, because so much of it is motion-based, like to spin, like to throw the hat in a circle around you, you shift the Joy-Cons to the left together. Do you do that with the Pro Controller as well, or are there button shortcuts for it?
Both. So there are a couple of button shortcuts that are... You can do it on any control scheme, I think. But there's also motion controls in the Pro Controller that work just fine. So I use some of those. Yeah. But you really don't need them to get through the game.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's it. So far, even within that first world, it feels like a lot of them are almost for funsies. That it's neat. There are these things here that you can do, but I haven't seen the need for some of this stuff because it doesn't seem to do anything too different than anything else.
Yeah, you don't really need it. And I mean... There are so many just like cool little things in this game. Like, I mean, you've already seen coins. Have you seen all the purple coins in levels that are like unique to the level?
Yes, I've seen a couple of different kinds of those where you can buy different costumes and different hats and things like that. I did not think I would have fun dressing Mario up in tons of different costumes and hats, but that ended up being like this just super fun thing to do in this game. And I ended up doing it. Like, I would get to a new level for the first time and be like, Mario, your outfit does not match. We have to fix this. And I would. Like, I would take him back into the Odyssey and, like, rearrange what he was wearing, because I was like, you can't wear snow gear on a beach level. What are you doing, Mario? And it was my decision to put him in the snow gear for the snow level, but, he couldn't be in boxer shorts on a snow level. Like, that was his fault, but I guess I put him in that. I mean... I really, really had fun dressing Mario up, and I never got sick of changing his outfit, which is something that I didn't think I wanted in a game, but now I know that I really enjoyed it in this one. And I'm laughing so hard at this because that is something that I do not consider being something you care about even a little in games.
It's not normally.
That when there is a cosmetic, because they're purely cosmetic, right? The only thing that they do is that they might unlock a moon or something like that to be dressed up at a certain NPC, but you don't get like cold resistance bonuses or anything like you do in Breath of the Wild. It is solely because you don't want Mario in his boxer shorts in the snow, and I love it.
I felt bad. He was shivering. I mean,
he does. Yeah. He does shiver. So he gets hot and cold.
Part of it is just the way that like he acts in the world. And I was like, no, I want him to fit in with the world that he's in. So I ended up having a ton of fun getting costumes and hats and stuff. And I mean, there's other cool things too. Like, there's 2D in this game, which you've probably had to run into by now.
Oh, it's so good. It is so much fun. I love it.
Yeah, it turns you into that 8-bit pixel Mario from back in the day, from when I started playing video games. And one of the things that you might not have noticed yet, because you're still early, but whatever costume you have on transfers into an 8-bit costume of that Mario.
Okay, no, I haven't changed his actual costume, just his hat so far. I haven't actually put on anything over instead of his coveralls, so it'll be interesting to see. I did not know that. That is great.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like there's a ton of fun stuff. I mean, we didn't even talk about the fact that you can like throw your hat and take over so many different things in this game, so many different guys and characters, and like
and like a cactus that's just standing there, and it like just hops a couple of steps, and it's like, okay, that's cool.
Right.
Thanks, cactus.
And there's so when you get to the first swimming level, like I've never liked swimming levels in Mario, and I was like, oh, I have to deal with a swimming world, like a water world. But there are cheeps in it, and you can go throw your hat at a cheap, and then you can just swim like a fish underwater and not worry about breathing. And it's the first time I've ever not hated a swimming level in Mario. Which
wow, that's a lot.
I didn't love those levels, but they were good, right? Like at the end of finishing those levels, I was like, that was a good level. Whereas normally in Mario, you do a swimming level and you're like, can this just be over, please?
Like I'm thinking back to Mario 64, and it's just like I hated them. That every time I hated them, I don't want to play those at all. I never like swimming levels. I hate watching people play swimming levels.
It's rough to do. But I mean, it's a really good game. You like it so far?
It really is. I do. I love it so far.
Okay.
I am really impressed so far. And almost like I love the 2D part because I mean, I wanted to let, if you haven't played it, you guys, or you haven't seen it, that it's a lot like a Link Between Worlds, where you like you're scaling up a building, let's say, or you need there's no platform to jump up, but you go into a pipe and you do a small 2D like mini level, and then by the time you finish jumping and platforming, you're at the top of where you need to be in the 3D world, and it's just neat. It reminds me of Super Paper Mario, whichever one it is, the 1,000-Year Door or something like that, when you went into 3D instead of 2D. It's just the opposite of that, where it's really, really neat the way that they've done this. And I wasn't sure after I did the first one how it would feel, and they've integrated it so well that it's like, yay, there's another 2D area instead of, oh, there's another 2D area.
Yeah.
There's
a really cool one too once you get towards the end of New Donk City for like the story missions there. When you do, let me know what you think of that one.
Okay. All right, I will. I love the name of that town, by the way, that area, New Donk City. That Austin messaged me this morning and said that he was on one that that there is a moon where you have to jump rope 100 times. And he said that he was having horror flashbacks from Final Fantasy IX on the PS4 to get his trophy. And but I paid less attention to that and just giggled at the town New Donk City. I'm like, I love it so much.
Fun. And okay, so I'm sure we'll talk about this more next week because you'll be playing it and you'll have more thoughts. The one other thing I wanted to mention before we jump off of it is that there are no lives in this game, and I think that is such a good decision for Mario to just like they've more and more been just super generous with like 1-ups in the past. I don't know, like 3 games or so. And
and I haven't played any since Mario Galaxy 2, I believe, because I didn't have a Wii U.
Okay, I think that was the last one where it was more traditional with like lives in it. Ever since then, you just get lives all the time. You would get 1-ups like crazy to the point where you never had to think about it, and it was like, why is this even in the game? So this game for Odyssey, they just removed those. And instead, anytime you die, it's more like Sonic. Like you just lose some money. You lose coins. You lose like 10 coins for a life. But you never get a game over. You never have to like restart back at, you don't lose progress. It's just like a tiny setback and 10 coins. It's like no big deal. And I think...
And it's so nice.
It's so nice. It's so nice to have that in there. So I just wanted to mention that before we jump off of it.
And Jennifer is playing Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze right now, and she loves it. Like, she's still playing it on the Wii U, and she just absolutely adores this game. And one of the things that she does, because she hates the life system and the way that you have to restart and you lose progress, that she takes all of the coins and everything that she earns, goes to Funky Kong and buys like 30 lives at a time, and then doesn't worry about it. She just does what she does, plays the level until she gets done, and then goes and buys more lives, because it's easier and better to do that than it is to deal with game overs and other kinds of power-ups.
Yes. I agree, and that's a good point, and I'm glad they did it for this game, for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, let's dive into the geeky offer of the week. This week, we have Gamefly one more time, because I feel like I'm almost done with my Gamefly subscription for the year. So you can go to gameflyoffer.com/geek and get a free month trial on us if you want to rent games and get them sent right to you, and you just send them back, and they'll keep giving you them from your queue, which is what I've been doing for the last couple months. I think I'm right at the end. I think I'm going to try out Call of Duty, the new World War II one, and that'll probably be my last one for the year, and then I'll cancel my subscription again until next fall-ish, just like I did this year.
And I love this. And one thing I am sad about with your Gamefly this year is that none of them seemed really worth talking about this year. Last year, there were some interesting ones, and this year, it's just more of the same. That there wasn't anything great in the B list this year.
No, not really. I think part of it was that there were so many like A-list games this year that it was just such a powerful and like good year in video games that a lot of the B tier stuff just wasn't, like you said, it wasn't worth talking about. I will have thoughts about Call of Duty, I'm sure, because I always do, and I usually think the single player campaigns are fairly interesting, so I can talk about that next week. I literally have installed it, and that's it so far. So
and I wasn't actually aware it came out yet. I thought it still had about 2 weeks before it released.
It just came out like last weekend-ish, something like that. Yeah. Okay, with that, it's time for a weekly geekery where we share what we've been geeking out about this week. I know you have a new phone.
I got a new phone.
How's that going?
It is going really well. I swapped from the iPhone 7 Plus to the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. So I went from iOS to Android. And I've done this before. I went from, I think, the iPhone 4 or 5S to the Nexus 4, and I absolutely loved Android then, and I absolutely love Android now. That the swap does take a while for me to get used to. That it is completely and totally different than it used to be too. That I think I was on Lollipop at that point, so I'm on Nougat now, I think, and Oreo will be released next year. They do them in. For those of you who don't know, Android releases new versions alphabetically, and they name each one by a candy. And now they're becoming branded because why not? Also because you can't really think of a whole lot of candies that start with K or O without branded candies. But that's neither here nor there. But I love this phone. That it is huge. That it's even bigger than the iPhone 7 Plus, which is why I got it, because I got it to do a lot of work on, because I tended to do a lot on my phone anyway. And it turns out that I finally understand why it's a big deal that Samsung got the patent on curved phone screens. And it's because you don't think about how much extra screen real estate you have when the bevel goes down like that. But when you're looking at it straight on and using it adds so much extra space that you can see and read on. That as the bevel goes down, the bezel goes toward the edge, that you just get massive amounts of screen there, that it adds about half an inch to the screen without adding but a few millimeters to the width, and it doesn't look like it's that much, and it really makes a big difference in terms of the way that you use it. And I had the Note 1 back in the day, and I hated the Samsung stuff on it, because Samsung always takes, and a lot of the companies do, they take base Android that comes on like the Google Pixel phones now, and they used to be the Nexus, and they put their own mask over it. They brand it, and they basically make it their own. And they finally made the Samsung TouchWiz is worth using. That they have really good apps and software now where I don't feel the need to root and mod this and put a different operating system on it like I thought that I might. And they've really done a fantastic job on this phone, where I'm sending the 7 Plus back soon, and I'm gonna be trying to sell my Apple Watch and grabbing a new Garmin GPS watch with that money, because this one, I'm really happy being on Android right now. There are a few things I wish were different, that the way that MMS messages work and that the quality of some videos when you send them over text messaging. But other than that,
I was going to say, the main thing
minor things
is just like, I miss you being on iMessage. And we also ran into some problems right when you switched that, like,
right.
I told you I was having a busy week, but then also, like, after that, I sent you a bunch of texts that, like, you just never got because they got sent through iMessage and you're not on iMessage anymore. And that's later, like, you said something and I responded, and I think that finally kicked it into the right mode. And then you were like, oh, I thought you had a busy week. And I was like, well, you haven't been responding to anything I've said, so I don't know. And you're like, what do you mean? So we figured it out. Like, it was caught in between iMessage and text message, and now it's fine. But that transition period is kind of rough.
And what's really dumb about it is that they were supposed to have fixed this years ago, and there's even a process for removing your number from iMessage that boots you out of every device and deregisters them all so that it doesn't send anymore, but it doesn't work. That it only works about half the time for half of the devices, and it's still a complete and total pain. That tonight is the first night that I have logged in on my laptop that I didn't get iMessage messages pop up still from from the old phone. It's fine now. Now that that's done, it's absolutely fine. But it's really, I do miss that part of it, but it's actually made me start using like Facebook Messenger more, which I know you're not on. And it's also made me start using like Google Hangouts and stuff like that, where I could use it a lot easier with it being on my phone. So, and on my laptop, so I could just keep it open. But I mean, workarounds rather than that. But iMessage is a better system overall. Like, I wish there were an Android version of it.
Yeah, I'm pretty committed to iOS at this point, although I'm holding on to my phone as long as I can because it still has a headphone jack, and that's super important to me. So,
and this has a headphone jack. That was one of the things that sold me on this one, is I got really tired of having an adapter. It's got a headphone jack, and would you believe that's already been wonderful and handy for me? It's like it's been 2 weeks, and it's like, oh my goodness, a headphone jack.
No, I probably would have upgraded iPhones twice by now if they had the right jacks in them, but they don't. So I'm on what I'm on for a while now. But yeah, I'm glad that you like your new phone and switching back to Android.
I do. I really like it. So I got the Switch is another thing that happened this week. So we've talked about it, and I saw Thor Ragnarok. You haven't been able to see it yet, have you?
No, I listened to a couple spoiler casts, like Rob's on the network. You guys go listen to the Comic Box. There's a really good Thor Ragnarok prep episode and then a reaction episode afterwards. So double recommendation.
True.
But yeah,
I loved it.
I mean, I listened to that, and then I've read a couple reviews of it too. Like, I'm not trying to avoid spoilers because I have no idea when I'm going to get around to seeing it, but I do want to see it at some point. I'm excited for it.
I think that you should find a way to make the time to go see it, even if it's, a weekend. I think that you and your wife would really like seeing it together, because it is, outside of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I don't remember just cackling so hard in the theater that my stomach hurt. That I was laughing so much during this one that I'm fairly certain I annoyed the people behind me in the theater. They did such a good job of changing what people like you didn't like about Thor into what people liked about all of the other Marvel movies without sacrificing what I liked about Thor. And so I really feel like they did a good job. The only thing I truly miss is that I miss Kat Dennings. I miss Darcy because she was one of my favorite characters, and she's not in this because they went super cosmic and really don't spend any time on Earth. There are a few cameos and things like that through it that I really enjoyed. But for the most part, this is what I wanted out of a fully cosmic Thor movie. And I'm super excited now to see what they do, because the whole aesthetic of this was that grunge 80s kind of... I don't even know what the art style is, to be honest. That gritty 80s sci-fi futurism, it's weird, but it works so well for this. And Cate Blanchett, my friend Barry, I hope he's listening to this, because Cate Blanchett I usually don't like, and she stole the show as Hela. That she was awesome and terrifying and wonderful. I hope you get to see this movie, because it feels like Guardians 3.
I need to figure out when. It might not be until I don't know. Work is super busy. Now is a very busy time at work. So I want to see it. I just don't know when it's feasible to get around to seeing it. But I'm glad that all the reviews are coming back, and it sounds like a movie that I'm going to enjoy when I get to it. So that's good.
And I didn't think I was going to get to see it. I didn't know when I was going to get to see it. And my friend Adam texted us and was like, okay, I bought a ticket for $5.25 on Saturday for Thor. And we're like, well, I guess we're going at $5.25 on Saturday to see Thor. And so that was what actually solidified that we were going to see it.
And did you watch the new Stranger Things too?
I watched the first episode of it, and that's what I wanted to mention. I haven't seen all of it because work has been crazy, and I've been kind of sick, but it's different than I expected it to be. It has a completely different tone than the first season does. It starts out and it's not as, I still don't quite know what's going on in it after the first episode because, it's the first episode of a new season, but it's not quite as eerie, spooky, slow horror that you see kind of a cosmic Cthulhu style enemy in the first episode, where it's this kind of almost grand epic scale horror that I'm really interested to see where it goes, because that's a completely different take than the first season had. So I'm super excited. Yeah, it may be something that you like, because even in the first episode, it does feel super different.
That's good. Cool.
So I'll let you know how that goes, where you read a spoiler cast, watch a spoiler cast, or read up on what happened in season 1, and then just jump in on season 2 if it's something that's the kind of horror that you would like.
I mean, even if season 2 is worth it, I think I'm only 2 episodes from the end of season 1 anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not bad then. You can power through the last couple of episodes. We're doing this weekend. I'm really excited and not excited. We had a huge leak in our house.
Oh, no.
That we found out about. Like, I just want to warn everybody. I put this in my Geekery because I want to warn everybody about what happened to us. That we went out of town for just a day or two, like for our anniversary, and we left the house, and it's like I'd sprayed some Febreze in one of the rooms, and it was like, oh, okay, it kind of smells in here. We have some dirty laundry we need to wash. It's no big deal. That musty smell that you get when you haven't done laundry in too long. So we did that. It's normal. It was like, we're coming back. I just don't want it to stink to high heaven when we come back. Well, we came back, and we couldn't step into the room. That, like, it was so bad that what we thought was Febreze on the ground was actually a complete and total leak that ruined all of the carpet and rotted out some of our furniture that we had no idea had been there for probably months and months and months, that had just finally seeped its way through into the main part of the room. So we had to tear up all of our carpet, and this weekend we're putting down tile in there and working on fixing everything. But I wanted to put that out there for you guys for 2 things. If the ground is wet, don't be stupid like we are and just assume you sprayed too much Febreze. And 2, they have tile now that looks like really nice hardwood. So we're kind of excited because it's actual like high quality tile that looks like hardwood, but is way less expensive than real hardwood. And it's not like cheaper laminate like we have in the rest of the house. So I'm kind of geeking out about that. And I'm like a super like boring adult now, but it's like, heck yeah, hardwood tile.
Hey man, home maintenance stuff. It happens.
Yeah, it does. And but yeah, I was actually really excited because I didn't know that a tile like that existed, only laminate, and it was way cheaper. So
okay. Well, I hope the fix goes well.
Yeah, me too.
So, I mean, we've been gone for a couple weeks, like since we recorded episodes early, so that they could hit the feed while you were away. Right. But in that time, I beat Shadow of War. And I put beat in air quotes here in the notes because I played through the end of chapter 3 or whatever it was. I already forget if it's chapter or if it was like something else, but the third section of it. And I like tiptoed into section 4, which people had warned me about, and it was exactly what they said. It was just there to be a grind. So once I finished 3, there was something that happens right at the end of 2 and then like right at the beginning of 3 that's actually pretty cool. 3 is not all that long, so 3 was worth pushing my way through. And then I hit 4 and I was like, nope, I'm done with that. So I went to YouTube and I just watched the end that you get after you do all that grinding, and that would not have been worth it. I would have been so let down. I'm so glad I did what I did. So I beat the game in every like sense of it that counts, that I care about.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you don't have to pay for, go through, and spend all of your time in. I totally. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And then I played Fire Emblem Warriors for a while, and it's like a fine Warriors game. You know, if you want to beat up 1,000 or 2,000 soldiers and, you know, have a Muso game where you're just destroying stuff and be in the Fire Emblem world, that's what it is. I didn't beat it because then all this other stuff started coming out, and it's way better. But it's a game that I'm going to leave on the Switch, and I'll probably go back to and play a little bit. It might just be a game that sits there until I travel, and then, you know, I'm on a plane listening to a podcast and beating up 1,000 warriors or whatever it is.
That doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even like that kind of game, but, you know, that sounds like the perfect opportunity to play that.
Right. So I'm not deleting it off the Switch. It'll just sit there for a while, and we'll see what happens. I also tried Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. So this was a GameFly game that was actually worth talking about. And I bounced off of it, but I don't think most people will. It's just the feel of the shooting with like the controller that I didn't like. And it felt kind of like a 90s shooter where it's just a little bit, I don't know, floaty, not accurate, not tight.
Yes.
It's just, do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
So
yeah.
it feels like that. It has that like 90s shooter feel to it, which I know is kind of what they're going for, right?
I think that's what they're going for with it, though, isn't it?
And the thing is, I just can't play a game with that type of shooting without a mouse and keyboard. So it might be a game that I pick up later for super cheap on Steam. Like, I could see this being really good with mouse and keyboard, but on the PlayStation 4 controller, I just hated it. Like, I'm pretty good at first-person shooters. I'm not fantastic. I'm not competitive level, but like, I've been playing them consistently since I was a kid now, and I just kept getting destroyed in this game. Like, people would just show up out of nowhere and like a shot or two would take me out, and it wasn't fun. So I turned the difficulty way down. I played a little bit of it just to kind of get into the story, and the subject matter they're tackling and the story they're telling, there's a lot there that you could dive into, and I think that's why I would end up going back to it on PC. Not necessarily the gameplay. The gameplay is a 90s shooter, kill a bunch of Nazis. Like, if that's what you want to do and you like that style of gameplay, you will probably like this game. Does that make sense?
Yep. That's yep.
Yeah.
I don't think I would like that kind of game, but I'm glad that it exists because I know that there are a lot of people who do.
Like, if you were one of the people that really liked the Doom reboot last year and you want this setting of Wolfenstein, like, go grab this game. You'll probably love it. It's just not me, you know, which is fine.
I downloaded the Doom demo recently, and it felt exactly like Doom, but it felt like a 90s shooter, and I was not up on that. That was not what I wanted to play in a shooter anymore. And it was a fantastic game. Like, I saw the production value in it, and I saw why people loved it and would like it, but it wasn't for me, and that's what this sounds like for you. It's just not the style of shooter that you're into, and you're even into shooters.
Yes, exactly. Yep. No, you got it. I think it is for people, like a bunch of people listening right now would probably love it. It's just know what you're going into for the type of first-person shooter it is. And then BlizzCon happened, which I don't pay a lot of attention to, but I always check out the news that comes out of it afterwards. So I watched all of the cinematics, which, have you watched any of those yet?
No, I didn't watch any of the new cinematics that they did. I read up a bunch on the stuff that was going on. Actually, the only cinematic that I watched was the release of Moira, the new Overwatch hero, because I looked at her and I was like, oh my god, she's a shadow priest. And sure enough, through that, like, she was a shadow priest and from WoW. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And she's going to be super hard to play and everybody's going to try and fail. And that was the extent of me watching any of the videos from BlizzCon.
Okay, well,
I read a bunch about it, but
yeah, I always love Blizzard's cinematics, even for games that I'm not actively playing, because like their cinematics department is just phenomenal. So I always
they're
watch,
just absurd.
Yeah, I watch all of it. So the thing that I came out of it with was that I think I want games adjacent to all of their current games. Like there was a Reinhardt Overwatch cinematic, and it was fantastic, just like all of the other Overwatch cinematics have been, that give you kind of a backstory. And that like 8-minute video, it made me want a dedicated co-op Overwatch mode or game so bad. Like, give me an Overwatch 2 that is only co-op, and like, I would love that game. I would play that game to death. And I know they do it sometimes for events, but it's just not the same, you know? Like,
and I get super bored. I did the Halloween co-op mode, and I did it once, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I did this now. And I did it the same way with the other co-op thing where you go through the dungeons, and when it was the anniversary release or whatever, I was like, okay, this is really cool. I'm glad they did this. But just not the kind of game I want to play with Overwatch. And I'll do it with other games. I love co-op games, but I don't know what it is about that one in particular that's just not what I want to play with Overwatch.
And like I do, like if they added a twist to it to permanently be able to do that, I would play that game a lot more than I am right now, even though it's still kind of an evergreen game no matter what. And then they had kobolds and caverns for Hearthstone. Yes. And the thing is, I think it might actually be the mode I want. I just didn't look close enough at the news, but it's kind of like a D&D spin-off type of thing, but in Hearthstone. And I thought it was just an expansion, but then somebody mentioned to me that it might actually be a single player, just dedicated mode. And if that's the case, I will go back and play that game.
I thought it was just an expansion too, but I didn't read into it at all.
So if it's actually like a dungeon delve that you can do as a single player and make like progression in, I would play that. Like one of the things that I dislike about Hearthstone the most is waiting for my opponent's turn. And when you're playing single player against the computer, the opponent's turn is almost always like instant because it's a computer, you know? So I really, really like some of the mechanics in Hearthstone, but I just don't get competitive with it. And so if this is really a single player game, I probably will get into it. So we'll see what happens. And then the other thing is that like the WoW expansion, it had a cinematic and it was everything I don't want in a WoW expansion, but it was also everything that I would want in like a Warcraft 4. Like if they took that same cinematic and they just slapped Warcraft 4 on the end of it, I would have been like super pumped out of my mind. But
because it would have been an RTS.
Yeah, it would have been an RTS, but also, you know, in WoW, it always seemed like more and more over time, it was stupider and stupider that the two factions are fighting. They should just give up and become like one massive giant faction to fight against
based
world
on
events.
The colossal enemies that they're fighting.
Right,
That they should not be at each other's throats politically, given what we know seeing from both sides. That we see all of the political stuff. So you're absolutely right.
Exactly.
It's not even dramatic irony that they're still fighting. It's like, no, we see all of that.
No, it's just dumb that they're still fighting. And it's like, I know Alliance and Horde and people have some loyalties there, but really all you're doing is keeping friends from playing with other friends because they chose the wrong thing one time 10 years ago. You know, like it feels like an old concept.
10 years ago,
really dated.
13, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And this expansion is just going like, we weren't at war, but now we're at war again. War with each other.
And I didn't know there was a cinematic. Like, that really did. I completely missed it. I'm looking right now. I see it here so that I can watch it when we stop recording, because through all the stuff that I read about Battle for Azeroth, I didn't notice that there was actually a cinematic for it.
Yeah, so if they played that cinematic and then they just threw Warcraft 4 on the end of it, I would have been all about it. You could have my money right then. Like, no problem. But as a WoW expansion, I just have no interest in it. Like, I know Legion I got around to eventually, and then I didn't really finish it, but I kind of played a bunch of it. Like, if this is the next WoW expansion, like, I just have no interest at all.
I got flying in Legion, and that was really where I ended it. That it was a great goal for me to get, and I'm glad that I did it because it was fun getting through all of that and had a great guild doing it. But looking at the stuff that's coming out with WoW, the changes that they're making, the just the stuff that they're doing, the new revamp of the artifacts that they're doing that'll up your armor and all of this stuff, it's just, right now, it's not the game that I want. It's not the game that I'm interested in even playing, but I could totally see how, you know, a couple of years from now when that's new, maybe I'll be in an MMO mood again for that kind of game. But right now I'm just like, it's more WoW. And
exactly.
That's good and bad. But the one thing that I was completely and totally, I shouldn't say, it's not disillusioned, that's the only word I can think of, but I was completely underwhelmed by was the new sub races that they're allowing you to have. That I usually like new races. That I really, I'm excited. I was excited when Goblins and Worgen and all of this came out, and Draenei, and just, it was great. And now I see the sub races, and I'm like, yep, they're just slightly different colors or slightly different models, and there are so many transmog options out there, and so many changes so many items you can use to just permanently change the way that your character looks. just by using one after another, it's just like, that's not that big a deal to have a Dark Iron Dwarf now. That would have been really awesome 10 years ago. That would have been great 5 years ago. But now it's just like, there's so much more stuff in the game that seems like it's going to be way too easy to gloss over.
And see, I would throw it back to the same thing with Warcraft 4. Like, you tell me that there are more WoW races, it's like, okay, it's an MMO. It is what it is. But you take those same races and you say, hey, each of these fills a specific slot as an RTS unit and has unique abilities. Now I'm interested.
That's true.
So, yeah, I mean, I know that they might never do another Warcraft. It's just WoW is what it is, and it's a behemoth now. So I don't know if there's ever going to go back to Warcraft 4. But I can hold out hope for someday. Yeah. And then the last thing before we wrap up for the night, we should mention we're getting close to the holidays, and somewhere in there we'll end up doing a Q&A episode so that we can record it early and then have a week off, probably for Thanksgiving, which is rapidly approaching now. So,
oh my goodness, I know.
So you guys should send your questions to us, and we will come back with answers in show format sometime here in the next couple of weeks. But
this is true.
Send them to one of us on Twitter, probably me, honestly, or our email, or honestly on Reddit. I'll go post something there maybe right after we record tonight and start collecting questions for the Q&A episode. So anything you throw our way, I will pick it up and I will write it down and make sure that we capture it for that episode.
That sounds awesome. I love doing those episodes. I love being able to talk at you guys like that, or talk I like answering your questions.
Yeah, me too. Okay, that's about it for this week. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback, or questions. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have the longer discussion threads, and I'll put a thread there for questions on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And if you want to throw questions at us on Slack, you can go to slack.geek2geekcast.com for your invite, and just talk to us there as well if you're on there at work anyway. And remember, we're also part of an entire podcast network, so head over to geek2geekcast.com and check out all the rest of our shows.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom, or you can send questions to @grnmushroom. That's Green Mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's, and I blog at geekfitness.net.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, geekies!
Comics. Hey everyone, this is Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek.
And this is Liam, the languishing, lascivious Liam of Langley.
Wow, that was extremely illiterate of you.
Well, I try.
We are the hosts of The Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network.
So, join us.
Bop, bop.
Oh, yeah.